and welcome to another episode of Reboot. I am Melissa Jimenez, the General Manager of MusicTT, and joining me today is no stranger to the creative industries, Mr. Simon Batiste, and he is here today on behalf of the Promoters Association. So, Simon, welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
And tell us a little bit about yourself and the Promoters Association.
Sure. Well, basically, I'm the CEO of Question Mark Entertainment. We're basically a full-service entertainment company that has been involved in everything from talent management to the production of film-related material to events. And in the area of events, I actually am part of the Trinidad and Tobago Promoters Association, and I sit on their board. And as one of the board members, I basically am part of a unit that's trying to initiate change and positive change in terms of the industry and how we move forward.
Okay. All right. I actually only learned about the Promoters Association, I think it was probably late last year.
Right.
So I was, first of all, happy
Right.
because, there are not many associations that are being formed within the music industry, even though, we're always trying to pump on in terms of formalizing these little groups so that you would have representative bodies to stand up for certain things. So I was happy to hear that is the case. And this association is led by who?
Jerome Priscilla.
Right.
Or he's better known as Rome in the industry.
Rome.
He's done a fantastic job. I mean, he's really helped, I guess you could say, motivate us and been a real champion for change in terms of his dealings, not only within the industry, but navigating that sort of public sector domain, so to speak. So I think having someone like him who's young, energetic, and unafraid has made us all a little bit more aware and courageous, so to speak.
Okay. So we're looking forward to good things then.
I hope so. I hope so. That's the plan, right?
So I know when people hear promoters, and then they Google definition, and then the question comes up, what's the difference between an event planner, a promoter, event manager? I don't know what's happening. There's a lot of crossover there. So you want to kind of just clarify what that is?
Well, I guess there's the Google definition and there's my definition. I think a promoter really and truly is an entrepreneur, right, within the field of entertainment, who basically tries to come up with ideas of how to produce an event, either small scale, medium, or large scale. My other terminology seems to blend very well with hustler, because really and truly promoters have to be the kind of men or women who aren't afraid to grind, right, and essentially get the support of private and public sector, as well as, of course, the fans, right, because ultimately you want people to attend whatever it is that you're doing. So I that's pretty much how I view a promoter, someone who essentially creates or crafts the idea or concept of doing a specific kind of event, with the hope of translating that into some form of revenue, right? Sometimes, of course, they do it all by themselves, so to speak, or they do it with groups or committees, or sometimes they're hired by a company to perform a certain task in that regard, product launch, etc. So I guess there are a wide number of definitions that are associated with promoter.
Right. And locally, we usually just refer to them in the context, or you hear promoter often when it refers to concerts, right?
Absolutely.
Music shows.
Yeah. Well, that's the space that we're typically known in.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've also heard people say, like, the music promoter is the gateway to making that artist be on stage and making things happen. What are your thoughts on that statement?
I think that was particularly true during the years that I got involved in the business, and certainly before that, which was like the late 90s, certainly the early 2000s, where The promoter had a lot of leverage. Back in those days, Roy Mirage, Cliff Harris, name a few, and I'll use Carnival as the example. They would do, 20 or 30 events. So getting on their billings consistently helped build your name, regardless of the amount of money they paid you back in those days, right? And it certainly was the stepping stone to then being able to go outside and tour and make additional revenue. Today, it still plays true to some extent, but I think that what has cut into that power that they once held, right, is the ability, of course, for artists now to promote themselves using social media and other devices, because promoting went hand in hand with that publicity. That being said, if a promoter has a really big show, Tribe Ignite, as an example, we used to do Tuesday in the Rocks. The idea that, Decibel, you want to get on this particular stage because it means that, people are going to hear about you, and it gives you some level of, I guess you could say, publicity that leads to more jobs.
Right, that you boosting your own social media can't give you.
In some cases, certainly.
Right. So looking more at the production of the events, what are some of the steps that are involved in that process?
Wow. It really depends on the size of the event. I think the basics or the fundamentals are always there, right? And this is not in any form of it's not linear, right? I might jump back and forth here when I describe this process, but having the right team, knowing who those persons are that can help formulate concept and strategy, that's going to be important, and one of the steps that I would think that you need to certainly have in place. The other thing too would be figuring out, what is your budget going to look like for the nature of the event that you're looking at hosting or staging. So that's going to be incredibly key. Beyond that, being able to develop the material, meaning press kit or whatever, to get out to your sponsors or your targets, because you want to be able to raise the investment necessary to produce the event. So there's that. And within that, who you're targeting. So if it's a carnival event, you know that you're probably going to have, X amount of artists on the show, but who's your key artist? Because you're going to need to secure them to ensure that that's going to happen. So usually if it's someone like Marshall that you've managed to secure, okay, that's a huge name, right? And now you can use that to promote the event, knowing that you still have some time down the line to decide who else you're going to have on your show. And you usually wait to see at that point who's popping and who isn't to do those add-ons, right? Beyond those processes, you would also need to figure out your venue, your suppliers, your marketing and advertising strategies. There's just a wealth of things that go into doing it, and I'm just trying to say them one by one. But there's literally a checklist of about 100 things that you need to go through to ensure that this one event, which is always the amazing thing because everyone always remembers it for that one day or night you staged it, but you literally could have spent 6 months or a year planning before getting to that actual event. So it could be torturous.
And that's 6 months a year depending on the size of the event, of course, right?
Yeah, unless you're really crazy and do like some people and try to produce something like Soca Monarch in 3 weeks. Then you either have some serious cojones or mentally you really need to seek therapy. But there are those occasions as well.
Right. And you mentioned in your earlier checklist about forming a team. And I know that that is a struggle for a lot of people, not only, I guess, in that promoter and event space, but also for artists. So that question always comes up, is it like, how do you determine those team members that is going to go forward with you to work in this project?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good question. I think the first thing is that, and depending on who you are as a leader involved in this process, right? Um, you have to be able to develop a team that's going to challenge you. Ones that are basically going to tell you, things like, yeah, I think you're making a misstep there, you're wrong, etc. Because that kind of input is going to be important to make sure that you can get to the finish line in a proper manner. The other thing and the other side to that, of course, is having people who don't come to you to tell you what the problem is, but also have a solution. Because I think the most annoying part of developing any team are having those people who just always know what the problem is, but they never have the answer. Like, those wouldn't be people part of my team, right? I'll be like, no, you got to step.
You need problem solvers.
Yeah, exactly. So that's also going to be key. And in choosing them, you want people who you can trust, but you don't necessarily want family or close friends, because those people could end up becoming your worst enemy, right? So you also have to understand the nature of the character that you're involving and who you are as a person. Because I don't like being told no, right? I mean, or yeah, it can't be done, it's impossible, all those kind of keywords and phrases. So essentially, there's a certain sort of, I guess you could say, strength of character, will, that has to also be measured in terms of, how much am I willing to take or can take. But teams are important, and having really, strong teams is what's going to make sure that in the end you have a successful event.
I absolutely agree with you 100% on that. And what I don't like with teams as well is, you see, when you have yes men.
Oh, yeah.
And you mentioned that in the beginning, you want people to challenge you. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want everybody to agree with everything that I'm saying. Everything that I'm saying is not right.
Yeah.
And worse yet, if I have to micromanage everything that you're doing.
That could be a huge issue. And I think, when I talk about events, I talk about successes and failures, because anyone who just wants to tout their successes are really, in my opinion, full of, right? You need to be able to see, the way people are going to learn is when you tell them what went wrong. And I'll give a good example of that. Last year, when we did Soca Monarch, I didn't micromanage because I felt that's not the right thing to do. You sign people to do certain things, and that's how it works. But the reality is that there are times that if you're going to make something happen, and you're uncertain about, let's say, the team or how things are functioning, you do have to get a little bit more. You have to dig a little bit deeper, because you can trust. But if there isn't that level of trust, with just kind of like yanking on the reins a little bit to say, what's going on there, things can go from bad to worse really, really quickly. So I do think that you're right. Micromanaging isn't my style either. But depending on what you've been brought into, or sometimes dragged into,
Right.
you need to be a little bit more cognizant of, how am I going to make sure that we don't go wrong in this specific case.
So that would have been a case where the team members may not have necessarily been persons that you trust and know and would have handpicked, but persons that were onboarded to assist you.
Well, to be clear, all the people that we worked with were great people, right? And it wasn't an issue that I didn't trust them or that they didn't trust me. I think that we were understaffed, and I think that there were people in roles that maybe they simply didn't have a full understanding or knowledge of what it was. And that was because my team, 95% of my team were already working on Tuesday on the Rocks. So there was no way to bring them out of that to
Right.
work on the event that, they were doing. So it was one of those things where it just happens,
So you had to work with people who are great, but you are unfamiliar with their working styles, maybe, or whatever.
And realizing as well that they simply didn't have the support systems,
Right.
like whereas with a Tuesday in Rocks event that we managed, you kind of knew everybody, and you had 3 or 4 people on one thing versus one person on one thing, which is hard for anyone. I bring you into a situation and say, all right, well, you have to deal with this aspect of stage management, but you don't have the 10 people who you can turn to and say, all right, well, you're in charge of backstage, you're in charge of this area, now you're running around, we talked about being headless.
Headless chicken.
Yeah, earlier, right? And so the promoting game, for those who see it, always have this feeling that it's a very easy thing to put together, but it really isn't, and you can lose your shirt. I mean, you seriously can on just making some bad calls, right? So it's a business, and one you have to treat like a business,
So one key area on that checklist as well is contracts. And we know that our society is allergic to contracts.
Oh, yeah.
And
They need a vaccine for that.
Yes, I use the word allergic intentionally. So where do you stand with in terms of contract negotiations, one, and persons being sort of hesitant to that arrangement because of unfamiliarity?
Right.
And yeah, how do you get them to be more inculcated into that way of operation?
Well, I've operated on both sides of that fence, right? So when you think about it, like being the promoter and the talent manager, so I understand how it works in either case. I think that if you're looking at it from the promoter side, you really want to ensure that your contracts are up to date. They're verified, meaning I didn't just download it from some Google
internet.
site, right? Yeah, that I got. And that those things in place between maybe at times your suppliers and your providers as well, if you can. But in this society, we do a lot of things kind of on the fly. So a lot of it goes on just some level of trust with even with vendors and suppliers. I've hired you for a job, I expect you to be there, etc., without a contract between us. The contracts that are developed are really true between the promoters and talent. That's where you find the contracts most of the time. And I'm ignoring here, of course, contracts between the promoter and the sponsors, right? Because that's also a contract. But getting back to the promoters and the talent, promoters have been known to create contracts that they send out to talent, which basically are these either 1 or 2 pages that simply state day, time, expectations, certain guidelines, maybe dealing with crowd, information like where you'll enter, things like that, and of course, your pay, your fee, and the terms of that, 50% down, 50% on the. It's supposed to be 50% down, right? 2 weeks prior, at very least, right? Unless you're booking them way out in advance, and the other 50% usually, and it depends on who you're dealing with, maybe a week prior to the event, maybe on the night of the event, right? And of course, there are those promoters who try to pay you after the event, because the promotion business is one of, and I think, unfortunately, a lot of promoters think like this, right? We're partners, you and me, the talent, right? We're partners. So, hey, if we lose on this event, hopefully you'll understand and you'll forgive me paying you the rest of the money, right? I'm not saying that that's what we do. I'm saying that's the mentality that exists in the industry. And we're trying to change that, right? Because the reality is that why people look at us the same way is because we're not all acting professionally. And professionally means that it's not the burden of the artist, because if the event makes money, you don't suddenly reward the artist and say, hey, it made money, so I'm going to pay you 20% more, right? So again, back to the idea of contracts, when it comes from the artist, which and every artist should obviously make sure that they have not just a contract detailing the financial aspects of it, but also technical and those riders that come with it. So these are usually documents that are provided to the promoter that, one, guarantee the service of the artist, right, and the terms and conditions of that service, as well as the promoter being told, okay, well, I have an entourage of 50 people, right, and I expect, 2 cases of rum,
Full
1 case of
service
scotch,
bar.
yeah, full service, right? So, and that's where now, as a promoter, I will be like, you are out of your mind, right? There's no way that we're going to handle an entourage of 50 people. You need to cut it down to X amount. And you have to go through the motions of deciding what makes sense from what's nonsense, right? I think I want to say it was Aerosmith, when these bands had on their rider that they wanted M&Ms and they all had to be brown, right? Colored or something
I've
like
heard
that.
those stories.
So I mean, there are those crazy situations, and we've dealt with them as well. So I think on when you look at it from either side, contracts are important, but you need to make sure that as a promoter, it has to work for you, and as an artist, it has to work for you.
Slightly unrelated, but you did bring it up just now. So I'm probably going to get flack for saying this, but that's all right. I can take it.
Okay.
This whole concept of, with the writers, artists asking for alcohol, I find that to be personally very strange. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm hiring you to do a job, which is to go on stage and sing or dance or whatever the hell you're doing.
Right.
I am not hiring you for me to service your vices. So I
Right.
find it a very strange concept
Yeah.
that the promoter has to foot your alcohol bill for you.
Right.
Like, why is that even a thing?
Well, here's what I would say to that, right? You may see it as a vice, right? But everyone has a routine that they go through before they take that stage. If I go up on stage, I could be very nervous, right? And it affects my performance. It doesn't mean that I'm going to drink a bottle of tequila, but, there may be things that I need to figure out, so that I deliver the best speech or whatever it is I have to do. The rite of passage for artists that basically puts down, hey, we want alcohol, as part of the thing, really deals with the concept of getting comfortable. I mean, a lot of times when an artist goes, and I don't mean just the artist, I'm talking about the personnel, right? I'm not talking about abuse of the things. I'm just talking about the nature of why it exists. It's really just about getting into that space. They're comfortable in a band room. They're comfortable at their home. They're comfortable, right? So now it's that idea that, hey, you make them comfortable, right? When they go out on that stage, they're going to give an all-out performance. The crowd's going to love them. They're going to love you, right? Everyone wins. So, yeah, you could approach it with that, I don't want to say self-righteous, but that attitude of, well, why you even need this, morally speaking. Yeah, okay, well, you can do that, but when the artist that you've coveted for so long takes the stage and they're flat, and right, then the artist and the band get, trolled on social media. So it's these little things that sometimes help. And I'm saying that in the context of, I don't believe in abuse. So if it is that someone says, look, you know, it'll be cool if you guys could put out a bottle of vodka and, you know, a bottle of rum. I have a crew of 18. No, you know, I'm not expecting that one person is going to drink it out. You have those guys too. But the idea is that, uh, they get into an environment that makes them feel like, hey, you know, we're home, we're good. Let's do this, guys, you know, or girls, and go out and make it happen.
Okay. I understand that explanation. And then, of course, I've been to several events, which is why I asked that question. I've been to several events where I've seen the acts drunk on stage. And they are noticeably drunk on stage. Now, mind you, if you're in the audience and you're drinking and you're head high and you're just jumping up and down too, then you're probably not going to notice it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, where does the professionalism parts, come into play there a little bit? But I understand. You're getting, in a comfort zone and
yeah, and
all
it goes back to who you're hiring.
correct.
Right? I mean, because there are some members of the entertainment industry that will go into a tent and yes, they have all these things and they don't even touch it. And it's like, I went and I bought all these different things for them. Look, they didn't even drink anything. So that happens too. But it's a professional courtesy. And it's
Right.
one that allows them the right to do it. I think that you're absolutely correct. For those who abuse it, they have to understand that their delivery impacts on them. And so that's why I say for some it works, others it doesn't.
Right.
But to take it away completely, that's probably not the wisest idea.
Gotcha.
Finding balance is key.
So, talking back to the contracts a bit, the greener artists, how do promoters deal with the greener artists on contracts? Because I know if Kesso or Marshall or whoever comes and says, okay, well, this is my contract, so whatever, they will be inclined to pay attention and listen, right? Because they want those acts. But then we hear the stories where the greener artists that are trying to, make sure they're doing their things in a proper fashion and whatnot, basically it's like, well, I don't want to sign this contract, or I don't want to offer you a contract, even if it's the other way around. And it's either take it or leave it, but then it's a big opportunity. So am I just going to let that go out the door, or am I actually going to, just...
Right. Contracts are supposed to, the way I see contracts, they protect, the promoter and they protect the artist, right? They're clauses and various, I guess you could say, line items in there that are going to work for you. It's better that you sign a contract to ensure that, you're protected. When someone gives you a contract, don't just go and sign it right away. Make sure you read it, make sure you understand it. Find a lawyer, or find a friend, who knows a lawyer or whatever it is to make sure that, that everything is above board. That's really important. And like I said, by having that contract, it's really going to help you, in a number of ways. And I'll give you just one way, and there are many, right? Work permits. Having a contract, right, allows you, even the ones that you've developed down here, use as proof of evidence in terms of, applying for a work permit in the U.S., right? So these things are documents that back up your legitimacy, right, as an entertainer. The ones who don't sign it, right, and that's fine. If you don't want to go about that. But from a legal standpoint as well, if something happens, right, you may also find yourself in an awkward position if it is that you want to go after this promoter, right? Promoter, I didn't hire them; they just show up on my stage, right? Where's the contract? So I mean, I'm saying, not that may not necessarily be the case, but you have to think about these things. Contracts are there for a reason. They weren't just made up to hurt somebody, and contracts have been used badly too. But the reason for them, right, is for an offer and acceptance that's binding by law, that makes sure that you as an artist are protected in terms of, hey, my pay, right? We agree to 50% down, right? 50% on the night of the event. My contract says that. What contract? You didn't sign the contract. It's a smart thing to do, but you need to be smart about reading the clauses and understanding what it means to read between the lines as well.
So I do hope that on the artist side that people start to pay a lot more attention to that, because if there's one thing I hope COVID would have taught those persons that were applying for relief grants, I would have got numerous emails on that, because you had to get an organization that supports whatever, saying that you are who you are and that you're in the business and bona fide and whatever. But in one of the attachments to that is that they had to prove where their income fell through.
Right.
But because they have nothing in writing whatsoever, everything was verbal, they was like, well, I was supposed to do a performance here, and I was supposed to do this, and I was supposed to do that. And that didn't, it's like, that's not cutting it.
Yeah.
You have an email at least?
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
we don't have an email. WhatsApp messages. So I'm like, that may not work.
Yeah.
So they have absolutely nothing to say that,
Right. And part of the problem as to why people laugh at our industry, we know the entertainment industry in Trinidad and Tobago is $1 billion industry, right? The problem is because we are so afraid, right? Like no one wants to be accountable. Oh, that means I pay taxes, right? Like whatever it is, right? They're going through all these ways of ducking. Right? But here's the problem. If your minister, right, doesn't have a real understanding of what this industry is worth, and we know it's worth $1 billion, but they think it's worth $1 million, guess what? They're not really going to spend any time, trying to figure out how to pump money into this industry, because there's no proof to them that the data is missing, right? And as long as there's no data, they in government are going to justify, well, we don't really have any data supporting this. You're saying it's $1 billion, but come on, right? Where, you have receipts, you have documents, oh, nothing. Well, so you're worth $1 million, I'm going to put $1 million or, less into your sector, and you all deal with that. So that's my point, that we need to stop being so scared. It's a business. It is an industry. And the people who say, well, we don't have an industry, the ass they're talking about. Of course we have an industry. Whether we're operating in the manner that we can or should aspire to, that's a whole different conversation. And obviously we aren't. But we can get there. What you're doing, Reverb and everything else, those are great, great steps. But we need to start coming together and not always, especially in cases like this, not always ask for, well, you pay me. Because if we can build this industry together, then they can't ignore us.
Yeah, and you mentioned a salient point there, data. Data is the death of us. As I mentioned in our very first Reverb session for this season, CSO statistics. When you go to CSO and you look at the statistics under entertainment, first of all, you have to look at the categories. Under entertainment, there's carnival, there's bars, there's restaurants, there's hotels,
Right.
There's music, there's everybody under the entertainment industry lumped into that one category. And without the ability to pull apart each sector to see who is doing what in terms of monetary input, right?
Right.
So you're seeing this $1 billion figure and you're like, okay, well, entertainment industry, they're doing fine or whatever, but then a lot of that money goes record is around Carnival. That's where a lot of that is. That's recorded around Carnival and the hotels and the bars, right? But that doesn't tell me what has music contributed to the GDP. So,
Right.
which is now linked to when we're telling music professionals on the whole now, and not just artists, anybody in the music industry, you all need to register your businesses. You need to start, and no, you don't want to, but you need to start paying the taxes and all of that so that we're able to track and measure and get some information inside of there from that. And that also justifies budget. So now I'm able to say, this is what the music industry is making, and say, please, sir, can I have some more? Oliver Twist.
Yeah.
and,
Well-
and, but so all of that sort of is a ricochet effect.
But again, it comes down to fear, right?
Correct.
Because I'll tell you why the fear exists. The fear exists because the idea is that soca music is a seasonal thing. And I'm using soca music as the example and the go-to, right? So here's the reality. I'm struggling for 5 years to make it in this industry, right? I'm working a job, plus I'm going in studio and spend all my money on doing these demos or these productions, right? To make it happen. I finally have a hit. You didn't see the 5 or the 10 years I struggled. I finally have a hit, right? And now a new fear is introduced, which is I'm making money, but someone is whispering in my ear taxes, right? So I'm like, no one was taking me on. I was being completely ignored. I suffered, maybe at one point I was homeless. At one point I couldn't pay the bills, whatever. I'm finally making money to help myself, help my family. And now, taxes, right? Now I understand the importance of taxes, right? But the thing is that there has to be a way for us to discuss this very openly, so that it's not seen as a bad thing, and how it can, in a situation like what we've experienced now, it can translate into wins for us. Because the idea is that if we understand that, okay, I make $1, and yes, I do have to pay taxes, and that's what I'm doing, in the end, if something bad happens, I can still go back to the sector and those running it and saying, hey, we need help, or I need help, right? So it's one of those things that exist where fear has put us in a place where we don't want to do it, and it's this real vicious cycle that exists because at the same time, people are going to say, why you want to pay taxes for when the government not doing anything for me, right? They barely put in X amount of money in Creative TT and MusicTT and this one and that one and this, right? And they can't help us, so it's fair, right? And it's fear driven by the fact that, there's this feeling that no one can help anyway. So it's a deeper conversation, and I'm really I understand I'm skimming the surface on it, and that wasn't an attack on creative or music.
No,
I'm
that's
just
fine.
saying very plainly we are underfunded as a sector, and that exists for a number of reasons, also partly our own. I'm not going to say that we're not to blame, but unless we start addressing these issues, like today, right, down the line, we're going to have a collapse in the system. We're ready now. Bungie and all these guys who exist are phenomenal artists that should have been getting support for many, many years. But the reality is we're still talking about Bungie today, right? And why is that? Because we're not developing our young artists every year, so that it's not just about Bungie, it's about, the other artists that are also on the scene. So it's a little bit frightening to me. I just said his name, but there's so many other great artists. But the reality is that what's frightening to me is that, we're not talking about the new artists. There's Voice and of course Nyla Blackman, etc. But it scares me to think, are we going to be talking about them 20 years like they're the big act to hire? I mean, I would like to think that they stay relevant for 20 years, but we still also need to know that next year there's this one and this
Nurture the
year.
younger ones.
If we aren't nurturing, if we aren't planting seeds and watering them, right? I'm telling you, at some point when soca, doesn't thrive like we all want it to, it's because we're not we're not we're not actually investing. I'm so frustrated.
Yeah.
As a promoter and as a manager, I'm frustrated.
Yeah. So for the Reverb Experience conference that we had the other day, Laureen O'Connor, she did make a statement saying that, we have Calypso Rose that's doing great things. Calypso, she's going all over the place and whatever. But the reality is, she's getting up there in age. She's up there in age. And the inevitable is going to happen at some point in time. Who is going to replace her? Who is going to be that other Calypsonian that these markets that she tap into love so much and is going to take her place? They're looking for that next person, but persons aren't, necessarily being spotlighted that way as, I can do this and I can take this over. So investing. And on that topic of investing, so in terms of promoters and financing the events and shows and whatnot that you want to put on, how do you approach that corporate sector in terms of the funding aspect of it?
Usually crying, pleading, crawling. Let me tell you, it is the most humiliating, in terms of a human experience, I find, quite frankly, it makes me feel less than human. The idea that I can go to a sponsor, right? I have to write them a letter, try to get something going, hopefully sit down with them, right? And I'm speaking as a promoter and this process, and having to kiss ass, right? To a level where you just feel so you just subhuman. Like, I mean, and I'm saying all this because I want people to know how that feeling is. And you can build a name and you do your things, and I'm sure, Dean and Tribe and these guys, send out their sponsor letters and they get support. And they deserve it because they've worked hard to get it, etc. But I would assume, even for the most successful in this game, right, there's still that numbing feeling of, man, I have to go through this shit again, right? Like, we're all adults, so I'm going to say that word. And I guess what has me really fired up about it is that if I come to you with $1 million idea, as in, there's $1 million investment, right, and you agree, and the fact is, you'll take it for $100,000 and you still want $1 million benefits, right, of what it is, right? I think the hardest part is I'm not allowed to come back with another idea, because when I come back with another idea, the approach that the sponsor will take is, yeah, but we gave you money already. So it's like I can only limit my ideas to one good idea a quarter. This is a really good idea, so we just go with this one. Because what will end up happening is that in some cases, not all cases, there are really good people out there too. But I'm saying it as it is. Screw this shit, right? The fact is that they will look at it like, oh, wait a second, we have $100,000 to give you, but now we know you have 5 projects. We'll give you $20,000 for each of those 5 projects. You know what I mean? We've won. We're in 5 events now, right? You gave you 20 grand, right? No, you must have misunderstood me. I was asking for $100K for this project. So I think, again, it's a situation in which corporate sponsorship and the way things are dealt with here, you're not rewarded for doing a good event. I brought in I say I mean my team, right? Scott Sedina, Carolyn Page, Nicole Nawani, all these team members, brought in Will Smith, right? You think the next year they would be like, hey, we're going to triple your sponsorship. It goes down, right? So the thing is, you don't win here. This is not an environment that creates wins. I mean, in the States now, right, and Europe, there are those situations where you do a fantastic event, Coachella, whatever it is, and guess what they do? They invest in you more. That isn't how we operate. We're not trying to see this thing grow. We just want to know that you give us more every year for the money we put in. The mentality, it has to change. Sorry.
But that's mind-blowing, though. If you bring somebody as big as Will Smith, and he is there, and he is invested in the project, and all of that, and then they give you less the next year, that doesn't make any sense to me. To me, it's like, it's a testament that, yes, you can do what you say you're going to do, and you're delivering, and guess what? I can do more if you give me more, if you partner more, if you invest in more. Like, why would you want to give less? Even if you can't do more and you say, I'll give you the same thing, but, a bespoke package or something like that, then some...
Even if you get the same amount, here's the question as a promoter you ask yourself. Because there are a number of sponsors that would have invested the year we did Will Smith. So I'm not picking on any one sponsor, right? But here's the thing. Here's how we start to think now. Oh, wait. You're giving us the same amount or you're giving us less. Okay. Well, then we're going to try to find ways to cut back. You see, there's a ripple effect that's created here. Because now everyone's going to lose. Right? Now, you might think, oh, well, the crowds are going to come back out. But here's the other side to that. You brought in Will Smith. How are you going to better Will Smith? Right? So you're trying to build an event on the idea, really and truly, it's about showcasing. Letting young men and women take that stage and prove themselves and let fans come in for the music. Coachella has several tents, and some of the packed tents are the ones where no one really knows who the artists are, but they go to support them. Again, mindset, nurturing, things that need to change.
And that's what a lot of those festivals out there are about, right? That's why they showcase that green talents and the middle tier talents and whatnot, because they understand that they need to give them that space to shine.
They're going to be the next set of stars, and then when they become that, they're grateful, right? Because they always remember this is where my platform was, and the crowds learned about me from here, etc.
Yeah, and I think, tacking back to the initial sentiment, that I don't think anybody likes fundraising. I mean, I know there's a few weird persons that actually do like it, but I don't think anybody likes fundraising. I prior to MusicTT, I was in the NGO sector.
Right.
And so we're dealing with grants, and of course, where we actually do have events, which is to raise funds, you're dealing with the sponsorship side of things. But I can tell you, I would send out like 100 grant packages, requests for assistance a year or more. Like, we have a whole hit list that would be sent out, and then you get like one or two persons that would grab onto that and say, yeah. And this is, of course, as you said, after you grovel and you beg, and then you follow up 20 million, 100 gazillion times before they actually say, well, yeah, they meet with you, probably because you're annoying them too much, so they just, let's just meet with them and get out.
And you feel bad for doing an educational workshop. Oh my God, yeah, thank you. You gave me, $5,000 to do an educational workshop. And because we're in topic, I'll tell you just how crazy this industry is. I was at an event in which one of these CEOs, remains unmentioned, bragged about the fact that he made so much money, right, last year from government contracts, etc., right, that not just his children, but his great-grandchildren will be secure for the future, right? I go back to the same individual right? About, a week or two afterwards, about an event we're doing to educate, right, school kids on, how to prepare beyond school. That same person's like $5,000. Whew! I don't know. I think that's a little bit unreasonable. I don't know if I can do that. The man was boasting about $50 million or some crap like that in terms of what his company done, but $5,000 is too much. And the thing about it is, where they don't understand, where they lose, is when you help prepare our youth for the future, and they understand what they need to do to become successful and navigate, right? You reduce the risk of someone making bad judgments that can affect you, right? So yeah, you can cherish all the money that you make, but the reason why you're cussing that, oh, these criminal elements stole your car or things like that, and I'm not condoning or justifying any of those things. But the idea that if you started investing in your people, right, and really understanding why education is important, right, then those things will get less and less, and then eventually, they really and truly won't exist. Because, people are aware, right? But we don't think that way. Very, very selfish. I say that without any fear. Burn that bridge down, right? The reality is that, we're inherently selfish and we're greedy, and those are the right sort of ingredients, right, that creates, something worse in the future. And we're talking entertainment. Why? Because entertainment has been proven to not only help people in terms of their state, right? That's why they turned to it in COVID, all these performances. Why? Because they know that, it's going to help people, right? Mm-hmm. Entertainment is the one thing that can right the wrongs, that can help people, right? It kind of, I'm happy to be here to talk about it, but at the same time, it does make me sad to think of how foolish we are. And I don't mean our sector, although there is that, but certainly that the rest of our citizens that can make a difference fail to do so.
And I can't remember where I read it, but basically the article was talking about during a recession, there are two things that people don't give up, which is, well, except for COVID. COVID kind of changed that, which was travel and entertainment. Why? Because those are the two feel-good things that allow people to explore it, allow them to, have those endorphins, happy endorphins flow through their bodies and whatnot, and they get to get away and retreat from whatever was stressing them out, whatever, daily activities, etc. And it has been proven time and time and time again that those are two sectors that never really falls flat because of that time. So I remember when I read that, I was like, interesting. I was like, how many people can I forward this to that needs to see this article?
Our greatest resource isn't oil and gas, It's our people. We have a beautiful, creative people that can accomplish anything, and we have. And we're all over the world, and in different companies and places like that, where some of us are gatekeepers that can create change. But I think that here we need to remember that.
Very much. So in closing, what are some tips that you would give to, let's say, persons looking on that definitely, we know the young ones, they just go in, they at it, they're looking to make those dollars everywhere that they can. So those persons looking at that promoter position, some quick tips in terms of entrenching themselves.
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is that they really need to look at it as a business, right? Just everything that you learn in principles of business in secondary school, etc. Look at it as a business. You really have to manage it like that. Managing the art of doing the production of an event and the relationships that you have, so that everyone understands who they are within the production, their roles and responsibilities, and what they're going to get out of it. And those conversations need to happen very, very early, because you don't want to have an event that's successful and then this one is saying they deserve more, right? So having your house in order is the first thing. I think that's the best quick tip I could give. The second one is don't do it.
Wow.
Don't do it. If you want to lose money real fast, this is better than gambling. I think that there's this, we see Jules Sobian, we see Zami, you see all these guys, and they will all tell you that they lost a lot of money when they first started. Coachella lost a hell of a lot of money. There was nearly never another Coachella after the first one. So the fact is that you have to be prepared, right, to lose. Because more than likely, that's going to happen, right? And so I think that's a very important tip. A lot of people just kind of, oh no, everyone's successful in this business. No. Right? It took a lot to get here. I think the third thing really and truly is the concept that you have, right? It's one thing to do knockoffs, right? Like, hey, someone did this event, so I'm just going to do this event and it's similar, whatever. But I think that you need to make sure that your team and your committee and all those people that you have that are going to get involved in whatever this event is, that the event has to have something that feels unique about it. It's like music, you go out and you do a song. Yeah, you can rip off other people's songs or whatever, but then you're going to know that song sounds just like that one or whatever, right? And the idea is that you really need to try to develop concepts that feel original in some way. So that you know it's yours. It's like, this is mine. And everyone, oh, you're the person who did soca. You're the person who did it has that stamp of authenticity. That's important. I could probably go on and on, but those
But
are
I
three
think
that come to
those
mind.
3 points stack back to your original statement at the very beginning, which is that the promoter is an entrepreneur. And every entrepreneur, that failure story is what makes them. It either makes you or it breaks you. And the most successful ones always have that failure story at the beginning, or several failure stories at the beginning, to say that, yeah, all right, this is what perseverance will get you.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's
So, so Promoters Association, any plugs that you want to make about that?
Yeah, well, what I will say is that if it is that you are interested in joining the association, I think that that's really key. Maybe, I don't know how they key in those things where they put, oh, there it is, go to this website, right? But definitely go to the Trinidad and Tobago's Promoters Association website, which I want to say is ttpba.org.
Okay.
And if I'm wrong, shoot, you'll never send me that info.
We'll put it in the description.
Put it in the description
Yes.
below. But yeah, definitely, go check it out, sign up. I think that there are power in numbers. And the more we can encourage people to get together in large groups and with a mindset of creating a difference, we'll do exactly that.
Exactly. I am echoing that sentiment. So thank you so much, Simon, for joining us.
Thank you. This was lovely. And congrats, of course, to you guys and what you're doing. Very
Thank
supportive, and I wish you guys the best.
We appreciate it very much.
All right, cool.
All right. So we hope you enjoyed that very informative session. And Up next, don't leave yet, we have our live Q&A. So be sure to participate, type your questions and your comments in the chat, and let's fire it up.